Okay, so let's load up some of these assets. The first thing to do is to open up your Rhino. I'm working in Rhino 7. I actually have Rhino 6 and 7, so depending on what you have available, I'm probably going to be able to work with whatever you need. But Rhino 6 and 7 are pretty much the same. There's just a few minor improvements in 7. If you're working on a Mac, you will not be able to use the same workflows that Windows people do. Unfortunately, in Rhino for Mac, there is a different way of loading assets, and some assets are not even available there. So if possible, if you're on a Mac, it would be great if you could work in a Windows environment like on Boot Camp and have Rhino for Windows. But if that's not possible, there are a few students, I believe, in the year ahead of you who do have Rhino for Mac, and they're going to be able to help you with troubleshooting and making sure everything is running smoothly. So I'm just going to open up Rhino. This is just a fresh window. This is what it looks like when you first open it up. I'm going to do a like interface walkthrough later, but right now I just want you to follow along with some of the commands that I'm going to do. So the first thing you're going to do is just notice that there's a command line up here where you can type in information, and I'm going to just type in options. It automatically kind of fills it, so I can just press enter, and it's going to open up this options palette up here. In the options, go to aliases. Aliases are like the shortcuts that we use to make commands in different programs. Every program has different shortcuts, but what I've done is made an alias sheet that corresponds to the same commands in AutoCAD. So even though you're not going to use AutoCAD this semester, if you get used to using the same commands in Rhino, it's going to be really seamless when you do begin using AutoCAD later. So in this aliases palette, yours is going to look a little bit different because you're only going to have the defaults. What you're going to do is go to import and then navigate to the folder where you've downloaded the graphic assets and go into 3D and Rhino. And here you're going to see a text file here called Rhino Aliases. You're going to select that and open it up. It's going to tell you that all of these aliases were found and imported. You can click OK. And then click OK again. And now you're going to be using the same commands throughout this semester that I am using. So if you don't load this document, you may get confused in tutorials later because your commands will be a little bit different from mine. So I really encourage you to load up that aliases option right away. Okay, the next thing I would like you to do is go back into options. So you can just type it in again. And this time we're going to go down to View. So you see there's a little drop down arrow here, and we're going to drop it down and go to display modes. And in display modes, you're probably just going to have all the display modes up to ray traced. But I've created a few custom display modes that might be helpful to you as we go along in this semester. They're called basic lighting, and then I have another one that's kind of like a personal display mode that I sometimes use. But more important is this basic lighting one. So I would like you to go down to this button and import. Go back to the Rhino folder and go to display modes. And if you're using a Mac, you're going to use this basic lighting for Mac. If you're on a PC, you're just going to load up basic lighting right here. You're welcome to select all of these individually and load them in, but the one that we're probably going to work with the most is just this basic lighting. So you can just select that, go open. And mine I already have, so I'm just going to replace it, and that's fine. And now you're going to be able to see that in your list that you have this display mode. You're going to understand what this is for a little bit later in the semester, but for now, just go ahead and load it and click OK. There's a few other things in these folders, and we're going to do that when we come to it. So there's a folder called plugins, and there's a whole bunch of folders here. You don't need to worry about those right now. We will load them when we need them. There's also a material. There's a few silhouettes that are going to be useful for when you begin drawing in Rhino. You can ignore all of that for now. Okay, so that's all we need to do for Rhino. Next, I'm going to go to Photoshop. In Photoshop, when you first open it, you'll probably get a screen that looks something like this. Just go over here to this icon and click on it. And that's going to just bring up a regular screen, a palette. I have my own workspace. I usually work in this photography workspace here. So if you would like your Photoshop to kind of look like mine and be able to see where all the buttons are that I'm using, just go up to Window and go to Workspace and click on Photography. And that should bring up all of these different palettes and panels. What we're going to do is first load some patterns. So over here on the toolbar is a little icon. It looks like kind of like a basket weave. So I have created a patterns palette for you to use in this program, and how you load it is just go over here to this little menu and go down to import patterns. Again, we're going to navigate to our graphic folder and go to Photoshop, and then go up to Actions, Brushes, and Patterns. Go into Patterns, and then you're going to see there's this one called Arch 515, and you can just import that right away. So as soon as you import it, it's going to show up as a folder, and you'll see that there's a bunch of different seamless patterns that will be helpful for you to use in Photoshop later in the semester. And this is just kind of a starting guide. I have a tutorial that shows you how you can create your own patterns. So later, when you have your own assets, you can add to this palette and be able to use it. The next thing we'll do is load up some brushes. If you go to this icon over here, these are all your brushes, and yours is going to look a lot different than mine because I have a whole bunch of different brushes added. So I'm going to show you how to load some brushes. If you go over here to the menu, you're just going to go down to Import Brushes, and then you're going to navigate to your graphic references folders, your CAD graphics in Photoshop and in Brushes. And in here, there is a whole bunch of brushes that I have included for you to use. And these are all brushes that I downloaded for free online in various places. Some of the most helpful ones are plants and grasses. There's these light beams, which are really helpful. I have used them in tons of different projects. There are tree brushes, which are useful for background information. There's some water brushes. You can go through and take a look at all of these different ones, but basically to load a brush, you just select it and then click load, and it's going to show up in your palette down here. If you just open that up, and I'm going to make my thumbnails bigger by sliding this up here, you can see it gives you a little preview of each brush, and we're going to be using these in our sections and visualizations. So go ahead and load up all of those brushes. Okay, finally in Illustrator, I'm just going to close out of this diagram swatches document, and I'll go back to the icon here, which will open up a fresh palette. And what we're going to do is load some of the brushes that I included in your folders. My brushes don't show up on my toolbar, so I'm just going to go up to Window and then go down to Brushes. And here I'm going to go Open Brush Library. And when you go to Open Brush Library, you can just go down here to Other Library, and that's going to allow you to navigate. So if you go to our folder, into Illustrator and into Brushes, you'll be able to load up all of these brushes that have been included. So you'll see this comes up. And now if you were drawing in Illustrator, you could select one of these art brushes and begin drawing with it. So that's how you load brushes in Illustrator. I think that's pretty much all you need to know for now, for the beginning. A lot of these tools we're not going to begin using until week 2 or 3 or even 4, but it's really good to get them into your computer and all loaded up beforehand so that you're ready to go when you need them. The semester goes really fast and it's really fast paced, so doing this beforehand while you still have a minute to think about it will really set you up for the future when you're probably going to be a little bit overwhelmed and feeling a little bit crazy, and you won't remember to look back at this tutorial and input all of these different things. So I hope this is helpful, and we will see you in class on Wednesday.